The plasma cannon fire had ceased hours ago, leaving only the acrid smell of burning metal and the distant groans of a dying starship. In the twisted wreckage of what had once been a proud vessel of the Kelani fleet, a small figure lay motionless. Beneath a collapsed beam, Nira was barely 14 cycles old by her people's reckoning, her violet skin now pale and mottled with deep purple bruises. The young Kelani's breathing came in shallow gasps, each rise and fall of her chest a monumental effort. Her large amber eyes, normally bright with curiosity, stared vacantly at the sparking overhead panels that flickered like dying stars. Battle had been swift and merciless. The human fleet had appeared without warning, their ships moving with a coordination that spoke of centuries of warfare. The Kelani, peaceful traders and scholars, had been caught completely unprepared. Their beautiful crystalline vessels, designed for exploration and commerce, had shattered like glass against the humans' brutal efficiency. When the evacuation alarms had sounded, Nira's guardian had grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the escape pods. But a direct hit had torn through their section of the ship, and in the chaos that followed, she had been separated from everyone she knew. Now she lay alone, forgotten in the chaos of war. Hours passed. The ship's power systems gradually failed, plunging sections into darkness. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows that danced across the debris-strewn corridors. Nira's condition worsened with each passing moment. Internal injuries from the beam that had pinned her were slowly draining her life away. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the corridor, growing closer. Nira's eyes focused with effort as a figure appeared in the doorway. The being was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing the dark blue uniform of the human military. She had heard stories of humans from her teachers, savage warriors who conquered worlds and enslaved entire species. Terror should have filled her heart, but she was too weak even for fear. The human stopped when he saw her, his weathered face showing surprise behind his helmet's visor. Commander Jake Mitchell had been conducting a final sweep of the alien vessel, checking for survivors and intelligence data. He had not expected to find a child. Holy hell, he muttered, rushing forward. His scanner immediately began analyzing the alien girl's condition, and the readings made him wince. Multiple internal injuries, severe blood loss, and what appeared to be radiation poisoning from the ship's damaged core. She had minutes, not hours. Mitchell's training told him to continue his mission. This was an enemy vessel, and she was technically a combatant by the rules of engagement. But as he looked down at the small, broken figure, all he could see was a terrified child who reminded him painfully of his own daughter back on Earth. "Easy there, kid," he said softly, his voice gentle despite the translation device's mechanical tone. "I'm going to get you out of here." Nira's amber eyes widened as the human knelt beside her. His hands, which she had expected to be rough and cruel, moved with surprising gentleness as he assessed her injuries. When he began working to lift the beam that had her trapped, she tried to speak, but only a weak whisper emerged. "Don't try to talk," Mitchell said, activating his suit's medical protocols. Emergency foam began sealing her wounds while stimulants flooded her system, buying precious time. "Save your strength." The being was heavier than it looked, twisted metal fused with alien alloys that his suit's strength enhancers struggled to lift. But Mitchell had not survived 3 decades of warfare by giving up easily. With a grunt of effort, he managed to shift it enough to pull the girl free. Nira cried out as pain shot through her broken body, but the human's arms were steady as he lifted her. Through her fading consciousness, she felt something she had never expected from the legendary human warriors: compassion. "My name's Jake," he said as he carried her toward his ship, his voice calm and reassuring. "What's yours, Nira?" she whispered, the word barely audible. "Well, Nira, you're going to be okay. I promise." His ship's medical bay was designed for human physiology. but the emergency systems were adaptable enough to stabilize her condition. As the healing chamber's blue light enveloped her, Nira felt the pain beginning to recede for the first time in hours. Mitchell stood watch over her throughout the journey back to the human fleet, monitoring her vital signs and adjusting the medical protocols. When his commanding officer questioned his decision to rescue an enemy combatant, his response was simple and firm. "She's a child, sir. That makes her our responsibility." The weeks that followed changed everything. As Nira recovered in the human medical facility, she learned that not all the stories about humans were true. Yes, they were fierce warriors, but they were also capable of incredible kindness. Jake visited her daily, bringing books and games, teaching her about human culture while learning about her own. When the peace negotiations began, Nira found herself an unexpected bridge between two species. Her testimony about human compassion helped convince the Kelani leadership that coexistence was possible. The war that had seemed destined to consume both civilizations ended not with conquest, but with understanding. Years later, as Ambassador Nira stood before the Galactic Council, she would often think of that moment when a human soldier chose mercy over duty. It was a choice that had saved not just her life, but the future of two entire species. In her speeches about humanity's role in the galaxy, she always began with the same words. "Let me tell you about the day I learned what it truly means to be human."